The moment you enroll in a master's or PhD program, there's this one massive challenge that just sort of looms large, doesn't it? The thesis. Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where today we're aiming to turn that feeling of being overwhelmed into something more like a clear, achievable roadmap.
It really is. It's often the defining piece of academic work you'll do. And yeah, it's arduous. No getting around that. If you're doing a master's, you're looking at what? At least a year of really intense work.
At least a year, yeah. And for PhD researchers, it's easily double that, maybe even longer, focused on this single huge document. It really is a marathon.
It is. And the funny thing is, unlike a skill you practice every day, most people only write something on this scale maybe twice, perhaps 3 times in their whole life.
Exactly. So it's almost always unfamiliar territory. You often find researchers starting out with only vague ideas, really, about what their professors and maybe more importantly, what their university actually expects.
And that unfamiliarity, well, it breeds anxiety, doesn't it? And inefficiency, too. So our mission today really is to try and replace some of that anxiety with a clear, systematic blueprint. We want to unpack the whole process, the expectations for advanced research.
Right, to ensure that no matter what your field is, whether it's, experimental science or something in the humanities, the quality and crucially clarity of what you produce is, well, impeccable.
That clarity point is key. The goal isn't just for your committee to understand it. A well-structured thesis, it should be clear enough that even an educated person outside your specific field can follow your thinking, your analysis.
That's the standard we're aiming for, definitely.
Okay, so to get there, to achieve that kind of systematic quality, we've basically broken this massive task down into 3 core phases, manageable chunks, if you like. Phase 1. Pre-writing, that's all the deep planning.
Right, the foundation.
Then phase 2 is the actual writing, the drafting part. And phase 3 is what we call post-writing. That's the detailed editing, making sure everything aligns with institutional rules, all of that.
Makes sense. So let's start where it all begins, phase 1. Because our sources seem to suggest this is maybe the single biggest factor in whether the whole thing succeeds or struggles.
Phase 1. Pre-writing and planning. You're absolutely right. The sources are incredibly clear on this. The stage isn't just, important. It's arguably the most critical step in that whole 1 or 2 year process.
Yeah, I think a lot of students feel this pressure to just start writing, get words down. They kind of underestimate this planning part, maybe rush into drafting.
They do, and that's often a mistake, especially at PhD level. The research suggests quite strongly, actually, that something like 80% of major thesis problems, delays, structural issues, they trace right back to poor planning in phase 1. It really is your guide for the long haul.
It's the roadmap.
Exactly. It's your navigational chart. And having a good chart, well, it brings immediate benefits. First, it stops you getting lost, which is incredibly demoralizing over such a long project. The plan is always there to bring you back on course.
And there's a psychological element too, isn't there? Confidence. Knowing what you're supposed to be doing and roughly when, that must help manage the anxiety.
Immensely. Confidence comes from feeling competent, right? Knowing the what and when just calms things down. And it lets you monitor yourself. You can check your progress against your own timeline. And seeing that you're moving forward, well, that's a huge motivator, especially when things feel tough.
And planning isn't something you do totally alone, is it? The advisor plays a big role here.
Oh, absolutely crucial, especially at the start. They're often the source of initial ideas. They're your sounding board. And honestly, they provide a lot of the motivation to get things shaped up before you even think about writing the final text.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of phase 1. The very first really critical decision. Picking the right topic. You mentioned starting early. Our sources say, first semester?
Ideally, yes. Start thinking immediately. Don't wait until your coursework is done. And the criteria for a good topic, it's a bit of a balancing act.
How so?
Well, first, it absolutely has to be genuinely interesting to you. You're going to live with this for years, so you need that personal engagement. But, and this is key, it also has to be exciting or at least attention-grabbing for others, your peers, your examiners. If you can't get them interested, you've got a problem.
So personal passion meets external relevance.
Yeah.
And then there's the academic requirement, the newness factor.
Oh, right. At master's level, and certainly PhD, you can't just rehash old arguments or work on something totally outdated. It has to feel current, like a new contribution or at least tackling a trend topic. It must add something tangible to the literature, to the science. Fill a gap, challenge a model, something demonstrable.
Which is why that initial literature review is so foundational. You need to see what's been done to find out where you can actually make that contribution.
Precisely. You dive into old theses, key articles, look at the analyses people have used. You're systematically mapping the terrain to find those gaps, those unanswered questions. Your originality builds directly on what came before.
Well, that brings up the originality challenge, doesn't it? Finding something completely new, untouched. That seems almost impossible these days.
It pretty much is, yeah. So originality at this level usually isn't about finding a whole new continent. It's more often about a novel application or perspective.
So taking an existing problem, maybe, but looking at it differently.
Exactly. Different angles, different perspectives, maybe applying a new methodology or a new technology that wasn't available before. That's how you carve out your unique contribution. You refine the focus or bring a cutting-edge lens to an important, perhaps established problem.
Okay, so how do you generate those initial sparks, those first ideas that start to refine the focus? Our sources mentioned a couple of specific methods: brainstorming and pre-writing, or free writing.
Yeah, brainstorming here isn't just random ideas. It's more focused keyword generation. You list concepts, fragments, maybe with your advisor or some colleagues. The key is not trying to organize it logically at this stage. It's about volume, mapping the possibilities quickly.
Getting it all out there first. And pre-writing. That sounds even less structured.
It is, and it's a fantastic way to break through writer's block, that blank page fear. You just commit to writing continuously for a short set time, maybe 7-10 minutes. Just write whatever comes into your head.
Even if it's, I don't know what to write.
Especially then. Don't worry about grammar, logic, spelling, anything. Often, your subconscious kind of kicks in. The goal isn't the text you produce. It's about catching a stray word, a phrase, a half-formed idea that might spark something genuine. You're fishing for that initial nugget.
Right? Try to unlock something you wouldn't get by just sitting and thinking formally. Okay, so you've got some sparks, maybe a potential direction. Now comes managing all the information you start gathering, and there's a strong warning here about documentation.
Oh, absolutely critical. First rule of long-term research: write everything down immediately. Thoughts, insights, where you found a quote, the full citation details. If you have a brilliant connection pop into your head and you think, oh, I'll remember that, you probably won't.
Especially not 6 months later.
Exactly. Forgetting that key insight isn't just annoying. It's a huge waste of time and mental energy. Resources you just can't afford to squander on a project this long. Document instantly. Computer file, notebook, whatever works, but do it now.
And then managing the sources themselves. Books, articles, databases, maybe even library archives. There's a point made about source balance that sounds important, not just gathering everything you can find.
That's right. You need enough sources to support your argument robustly, of course. But there's a real danger, especially for keen researchers, of gathering too many unnecessary sources. It's like data hoarding.
And that makes things too complicated.
Way too complicated. It bogs you down, makes it harder to see the core argument, and massively slows down the actual writing. You have to be quite ruthless, actually, in deciding what is genuinely essential for your specific argument, not just tangentially related.
Yeah, efficiency is key. So how do you manage that volume effectively? Beyond just basic searching, what techniques help?
Well, advanced reading techniques are vital time savers. Skimming is one, quickly getting the gist of a text, its structure, its main points, before you commit to reading it fully.
To see if it's actually relevant first.
Exactly. And scanning is the other, searching rapidly for specific keywords or concepts within a text. This is where digital tools are amazing. Using Ctrl+F or Command+F to instantly find mentions of your key term can tell you in seconds if an article is worth a deeper read, saving you potentially hours.
Smart. Okay, and this leads back to perhaps the most crucial, practical piece of advice in this whole phase: saving, grouping, and backing up everything relentlessly.
This is non-negotiable. It's like your thesis life insurance. Over a year or two, you'll collect hundreds, maybe thousands of files, articles, notes, data sets. They have to be grouped logically.
So separate folders for different themes or variables?
Absolutely. If you're studying, say, consumer behavior and Generation Z, you need distinct folders. Don't just dump everything into one giant thesis sources folder. You'll waste so much time later trying to find things or remember which paper supported which point.
Makes sense. And the backup part. You paint a pretty scary picture of what can go wrong.
Because it does go wrong. Hard drives fail, laptops get stolen, viruses happen. Imagine being 18 months in, nearly finished your analysis and losing everything. Your articles, your data, your drafted chapters, gone.
Yeah, that's the nightmare scenario.
It's an existential threat to your degree, frankly. So Every single piece of work, even rough notes, a single downloaded article needs to be saved and backed up in multiple places. Cloud storage is great, email important drafts to yourself, use an external hard drive. Redundancy is key, multiple separate locations. It's the only professional way to operate.
Okay, so that covers the groundwork. Topic, ideas, sourcing, managing information. Now we move into structuring the thesis itself, planning the actual framework. Why is this detailed blueprint so important?
Well, this detailed planning phase, this is where you give the whole project its intellectual shape. It's what stops you from hitting that wall halfway through, feeling like you've run out of things to say, that drying up feeling.
Ah, right, because you know what needs to come next.
Exactly. And for a long piece of work, 100, maybe 200 pages planning is absolutely vital to prevent repetition. Repeating arguments or points is a major quality killer. It suggests you haven't structured your thinking properly, and frankly, it bores the reader, especially your examiner.
Good point. Repetition signals poor planning. And it also enforces that logical flow we talked about. Like, you can't discuss your results before you've explained how you got them.
Precisely. The basic order, intro, methods, results, conclusion is obvious, but the plan enforces that logic at a much finer level. It ensures your methodology section fully justifies the analytical tools you then use in the results section. It dictates the sequence.
And this plan, this framework, it needs to act like a guide for the reader.
Yes. Think of it as a pilot. It needs to clearly navigate the reader, whether they're an expert in your field or just an educated person, through your entire argument step by step. So the core building blocks of that framework need to be really clear right from the planning stage.
Okay, let's break down those building blocks. What needs to be in that plan?
Right. First, clearly define the general research area. Then you need to detail exactly how you identified and refined your specific research problem, showing how it addresses a gap in the current literature. That justification is key.
So setting the stage and positioning your work, what's next?
Methodology. You have to specify which methodology you're using, qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, whatever it is. But crucially, the plan must include the why. Why this method and not others? Same for your data analysis techniques, specific tests, software you need to justify their selection, methodological rigor.
Justification is clearly a recurring theme here.
It is. Then, obviously, the plan outlines where you'll present your findings, the solutions, conclusions, outcomes that flowed directly from your analysis. And finally, it has to address applicability, your recommendations, and importantly, a section acknowledging the study's limitations.
Ah, limitations. That often feels like admitting weakness, but it sounds like it's actually a necessary part of good research.
Yeah, absolutely necessary, and not a weakness at all. It's about acknowledging reality. No researcher has infinite time, money, or energy. We all operate under constraints. Failing to mention them seems naive. Successful research actually showcases how well you manage those constraints.
So how do you apply them strategically, like the example given?
Right, like instead of trying to study all of Generation Z worldwide, which is impossible, you strategically limit your scope. Maybe it's first-year engineering students at Edith University. That narrowing isn't a failure. It's a justified, necessary focusing of your research universe.
And you have to state those limitations clearly in the thesis.
Explicitly state them and explain why they were necessary. And then, importantly, based on those limitations and your findings, you have a scientific duty to suggest directions for future research. It shows how your work contributes to an ongoing conversation. Research never really ends.
It just sets up the next question.
Exactly. You're laying groundwork for others, or maybe even for your own future work.
Okay, so that's the overall framework. What about planning the content within each chapter? How detailed does that need to be?
Pretty detailed. For each chapter you map out, you need to define its core purpose. What specific piece of the puzzle does this chapter solve? What question does it answer?
And how it connects to the others.
Yes, that's crucial for quality. You need meaningful links between chapters and even between paragraphs within chapters. We call it semantic integrity. The whole thing needs to hang together as one coherent argument, not just a series of vaguely related essays.
Can you elaborate on semantic integrity? How do you achieve that in practice in such a long document?
It means the reader can always follow the logical thread. Practically, you use signposting language, phrases like, having established X in the previous chapter, we now turn to Y, or section headings that directly reflect your research questions. It means the argument in Chapter 3 clearly sets up the analysis in Chapter 4. If the reader ever feels lost or wonders why are they telling me this now, then the semantic integrity has broken down.
So constant reinforcement of the connections and the overall argument. That sounds like it requires intense focus. You mentioned mind mapping as a tool to help with this.
Yes, mind mapping can be incredibly helpful here. It's a visual tool, central idea in the middle, main themes branching off, subpoints branching off those. Its main value is keeping you focused, acting as a kind of intellectual control.
How does it control things?
It forces you to constantly check if a point you want to make actually connects back to one of your main branches, to your core argument. If you can't easily map it, it's probably a tangent.
And tangents are bad.
In a thesis, generally yes. They make the work longer than necessary. You creak towards 200 pages when 120 would have been stronger, and they often dilute the main argument, making it less impactful or even boring. The mind map helps you stay disciplined and cut out the fluff. It's like an editorial guardrail.
Got it. So the planning phase really sets everything up. Once that detailed blueprint is locked down, the structure, the flow, the justifications, then you move into phase 2, the actual writing.
That's the idea. And if the planning is done well, this phase, the drafting, can actually feel like the less difficult part. The heavy lifting of structuring the argument and finding the evidence is already done.
Less difficult, maybe, but still requires discipline. What are the key writing rules for this drafting stage, especially at this level? Keep it simple as mentioned, but that needs care, right?
Absolutely. Simple here doesn't mean simplistic or dumbing down complex ideas. It means using clear, direct language. Focusing on getting your point across effectively without overly complex sentences or unnecessary jargon. Clarity is the goal, not convoluted prose to sound academic. Avoid that trap.
Maximum clarity, minimum obstruction. Makes sense. What about taking breaks? The idea of a rest and reflection.
Hugely important. After you've drafted a significant section, step away from it for a few days, maybe even a week if you can. Your brain gets too close to the material, you lose objectivity.
You can't see the wood for the trees anymore.
Exactly. Coming back with fresh eyes, with that mental distance, makes it so much easier to spot errors, awkward phrasing, logical inconsistencies, even places where you might contradict yourself subtly. That break isn't laziness, it's a strategic part of the quality control process.
And technology. Using grammar checkers, citation managers.
Use everything available. Good grammar software, reliable citation managers to handle the formatting, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Share drafts with trusted friends or colleagues, and definitely with your advisor. Presenting clean copy saves everyone time and shows professionalism.
Which leads us nicely into phase 3, revising and editing. This sounds like it runs alongside the drafting, really. It's about self-correction.
It does. It's an iterative process. The core of this phase is having a systematic revision checklist, questions you constantly ask yourself to ensure the quality is there.
Okay, let's go through those key revision questions. What should researchers be asking themselves?
First, the basics. Have I followed all the structural rules? Headings, sections, formatting, is it consistent with the institutional guidelines? Does the argument flow logically from start to finish? Are there any jarring jumps or missing links?
What about connecting different parts of the thesis?
That's crucial. Our cross-reference is clear. If you mention something from Chapter 2 and Chapter 5, is it easy for the reader to find it? Clear signposting is vital in a long document. It maintains that semantic integrity we talked about.
Right. Now, there's a specific point about referencing within paragraphs that seems really important for distinguishing high-level work. Avoiding just one reference for a big chunk of text.
Yes, this is a key indicator of postgraduate quality. You really need to avoid writing long paragraphs that rely on just a single citation. Why? Because it suggests you've just summarized or paraphrased that one source.
Rather than synthesizing ideas.
Exactly. Professional quality demands synthesis. It means integrating ideas, maybe comparing or contrasting viewpoints from several sources within a single paragraph, or even a sentence cluster. Typically, you'd expect to see at least 2 or 3 references woven together to support a complex point. It shows you're engaging critically with the literature, not just reporting it.
That's a really crucial distinction. Synthesis over summary. What else is on the checklist?
Relevance. You have to be ruthless here. Is every single point, every source you mention, actively contributing to your main argument? If not, cut it. Eliminate tangents, unnecessary explanations, sources that don't quite fit. Be concise. Kill your darlings, as they say.
But necessary. And then the final checks.
Visuals and flow. Does it look professional? Check spelling, grammar, formatting one last time, and read it through specifically for logical flow. Does it still hang together? Does topic A lead smoothly into topic B? Can the reader follow the argument easily from beginning to end without getting lost or bored?
Okay, so that covers the ongoing revision. Then there's the final stage of phase 3, The absolute final post-writing edits and dealing with institutional rules.
Right, the final polish. Proofreading everything articulously one last time is essential. No matter how careful you've been, small errors inevitably creep into long documents.
But the most important advice here seems to be about something you should do right at the very start, the institutional booklet.
Absolutely. Before you type a single word of your actual thesis draft, you must get hold of, read, and fully understand the specific formatting and submission guidelines provided by your university or the journal you're targeting.
This is the rule book you can't ignore.
It's the ultimate rule book. It dictates everything. The required font, maybe Times New Roman, maybe something else. The exact point size for titles, for body text, 14 point, 12 point, double-spaced, margin sizes, citation style, APA, MLA Chicago, page numbering format, all those tiny details.
And ignoring them causes headaches later.
Massive headaches. If you write 150 pages in the wrong font or with the wrong margins, fixing it all in the final stressful days before submission is incredibly tedious and frustrating. It's far easier to set up your document correctly from day one. Use the required template, follow the citation style strictly, get the formatting right from the beginning. It saves so much pen later.
Sound advice. Okay, so we've covered the 3 phases: meticulous planning, disciplined writing, and rigorous revising. To wrap up, let's summarize those 8 key actionable tips that encapsulate this whole process.
Sure. Tip 1. Nail down your ideas with absolute clarity right at the start. Tip 2. Write from a place of deep understanding. Really grasp the material yourself before you try to explain it.
Tip 3. Know exactly what your advisor and institution expect, but blend that with your own goals for the project. Tip 4. If it fits, connect your personal or professional experience to the topic. It can add real-world depth.
Tip 5. Always be open to learning. From your advisor, from critiques, from other research. Adaptability is key in scholarship. Tip 6. Constantly self-check your work for logic, clarity, and whether it's still answering your main question. Stay focused.
Tip 7 sounds crucial for staying sane. Proactively seek feedback from your advisor. Don't just wait for meetings. A quick email or update can keep you motivated, get you unstuck, and keep them in the loop.
Definitely. And the last one, tip 8, correct errors or fill gaps as soon as you spot them during revision. Don't put corrections off until later. Deal with them promptly to maintain momentum and quality.
So there we have it, taking that daunting, multi-year thesis journey and breaking it down. It really comes back to that systematic approach. Plan meticulously, communicate clearly, and check your work constantly.
And that phase 1 planning really is the bedrock. It provides the structure, the direction, and honestly, the confidence you need to see it through.
And as a final thought, tying back to the nature of research itself, that requirement to offer recommendations for future studies based on your limitations.
Yes, it highlights a fundamental truth about academia, doesn't it? Research is never truly finished. You solve one piece of the puzzle within defined limits, but in doing so, you inevitably reveal new questions, new avenues to explore.
So the final challenge really is, based on your findings, what's the next question you're posing for the scholarly community?
That's the mark of a real contribution, leaving the field slightly different and pointing the way forward.
A perfect place to leave it. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into thesis mastery.